All right, in this lecture, we're going to go over advanced form and 3D shadowing and highlights for those advanced forms. So first off, we're going to start off with the shape that we created in a few lectures ago. So it was sort of a squiggly plus sign, like so, and then we had the edges coming off. We'll just quickly finish up the shape so we can start demonstrating on it. All right, so there's sort of our organic shape that has form to it, but how do we add highlights and shadows to this? Well, this is advanced because it's got some curves on it and it's also going to have some cast shadows on it. So first off, we need to decide where our light source is coming from. So let's say that our light source is coming from the top up here, like so. It's going to be shining down in this direction. So where are these highlights going to be? Well, we're going to get a highlight on this top edge right here. We're going to get a highlight on this top edge. And as this curves under, it's going to get more of a shadow, but then it curves back and you get more of a highlight. And so that's why it's considered complicated. We're also going to get a cast shadow being cast from this object right here, this part of the shape, onto this bottom part down here. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, let's start off with our core shadows. Our core shadows are going to be on the opposite side of our light source. So that means it's going to be on these bottom edges of our shape. So let's go ahead and fill those in. Like so. Same with over here. And then we also are going to get those core shadows over here. All right, perfect. Next, we need to add in our other shadows. So we've already kind of added in our mid-tone shadows here, but we need to also add in a mid-tone shadow right here, because as this piece curves back underneath, you're going to get a little bit of a shadow there, and then it's going to slowly fade back into highlight as you get to this surface right here. So we're going to add a little bit of a shadow there. Perfect. All right. Now next what we want to do is, since the light source is at the top and kind of hitting it more from this side, we need to add a mid-tone shadow to this surface right here. And so we'll go ahead and we'll add that in. Great. Now lastly, we need to add in a cast shadow from this object right here. So this is going to be casting a shadow down onto this. So let's add the edge of that shadow, and then we can go ahead and fill in that area like so. And now that has a nice cast shadow on it. Now lastly, let's add the cast shadow onto our surface. And because this is a lot more complicated and it's kind of sitting on its edge, it's going to be relatively complicated, but it's okay. We can go ahead and add it in anyways. So this is going to be getting a cast shadow coming from this side. So it's going to be coming off like so. And then that's going to kind of come around like that. And you're just going to basically get a mimic shape of your shape here. And as it comes off, we don't even have to worry about the shape anymore too much because it's going to fade away. So let's go ahead and fill that in with our cast shadow value. Just like so. All right, great. Now let's have a look at another type of an advanced highlights and shadows. So let's say that we have sort of an organic shape, something like this. Okay, now that just looks like a flat shape, but by adding highlights and shadows to it, you can actually make it a three-dimensional form. So let's decide where our light source is going to be coming from. Let's have it coming from over here, and it's going to be coming in this direction. I'm going to switch over to a sharpened pencil. So first what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add in there the core shadow on the side that we need it on. So since the highlight is over here, the core shadow is going to be on the opposite side of that. So we're going to get core shadow along this edge. as well as along this edge. We'll also get some right here. We'll also get a little tiny bit right there. And then we'll get a little bit right here also, because all of this is on the opposite side of our light source. Then let's go ahead and add in our midtone. So I'm going to lightly sketch in that midtone there. And even these edges are going to get a little bit of midtone. Right, cool. So now we just added some form to that shape. So it stands out as a lot more realistic now. We can also go ahead and add in that cast shadow. So the cast shadow is going to be cast off like this. Now in this case, the cast shadow is so short that I didn't really have time to make it go from dark to light, so I kept the whole thing dark. But now you can see we just added some 3D to this flat shape just by adding some highlights and shadows to it. Now, highlights and shadows get even more complicated than this. So let's say that we were doing a rock. So let's go ahead and draw sort of a random shape, like so. And then let's decide where our light source is coming from. So let's say our light source is coming from this side again, and it's coming in that direction. Well, now it's a little bit more complicated because there's going to be all kinds of faces and different angles in here. So first off, what we want to do is we want to start off with the basic form of our rock. So we know that the highlight is going to be hitting this top area. So we need to decide where this top area surface is. So the top area surface is going to be something like so. And then everything over here is going to be filled in with a mid-tone shadow. We can probably darken that a little bit more. All right, great. So now that that's filled in with a mid-tone shadow, we need to decide where our surfaces are going to be that are on the opposite side of this. Well, we know for sure that this rock is going to round as it gets underneath the bottom of the rock, and so that's definitely on the opposite side of our light source. So we can add in some darker shadowing on this bottom area. And then let's not forget to blend that into our midtone. All right, perfect. But now what if we wanted to add kind of more of some texture in there? Well, you do that by using highlights and shadows. So let's say we wanted sort of a hole in our rock. Well, what we could do is we could go ahead and add in some of our core shadow, and then that would round underneath like so. And now we got kind of the illusion that there's a hole in this rock, okay? And we can also go ahead and add in some other things, such as a crack. So we can put a crack along here. And then as it gets into this highlight area, it's going to get lighter and not be so dark. Like so. And we can also do other things like use or create undercuts. So if I add in more of a dark shadow like this and it fades in like that, well, now I get a lot more of a look of an undercut in my rock. And I can add all sorts of stuff like this into my rock to start playing more with the form of the rock. And then up in this highlight area, we can even add some more form by adding some of the mid-tone color to create some of this same texturing. But basically, anytime you have shadows, it's just creating form, and shadows are just created from lack of light. All right, cool. Now let's try one more advanced type of form. So let's say we want to do a form made out of a couple of different shapes. So let's say our form is made out of a cube. So let's create a cube first. And then let's say on top of that cube we have a cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a cylinder. And then let's say on the cylinder, or in the cylinder actually, is a sphere that's partially stuck in the cylinder. So we're going to draw a sphere right there. And then we're going to go ahead and finish drawing this item out. And as we get over here, it gets a little bit tricky. We need to figure out how that sphere connects into our cylinder. So it's basically going to come around like this. That'll come down like so. So now it looks like that sphere is actually stuck inside of our cylinder, and I can go ahead and erase away any unwanted areas like that. So how does the highlight and shadow look on this form? Well, let's first off figure out where our light source is coming from. So we're going to have it coming from up here at this angle. So we know we're going to get a highlight right here on our ball, so let's go ahead and add that highlight in first off. So we're going to go ahead and fill in this rounded area. And we'll add in our core shadow. The next thing we know is that this ball or sphere is going to be creating a cast shadow onto our cylinder. So we need to go ahead and create that cast shadow. So it's going to be, the cast shadow is basically going to be the same shape as our ball. It's just going to be stretched out, and also it has to be applied to this form right here. So cast shadows are definitely applied to the form of an object that it's being cast on. And so since this is a rounded object, this is also going to get stretched and rounded around the edge of this, like so. So then we can go ahead and fill in that cast shadow, which is slowly going to fade out as it gets to the other side. Like so. And then we can go ahead and erase away that line a little bit because I got it a little bit too dark. Alright, then we can go ahead and add a little bit of shadow up here at the top because that's also going to be getting hit by the cast shadow. And let's go ahead and darken these lines up so we can see the form a little bit better. Perfect. Next, let's add the highlights and shadows to our cylinder. So even though we have this cast shadow here, there's still going to be more highlight and shadow on this. So down here we know that this side of the cylinder is going to be the highlight edge because the light is coming from this side. And then this side is going to be our shadow edge. So we can go ahead and add in our core shadow, which is slowly going to turn into our midtone and then into our highlight, like so. Then we know that this cylinder is going to be casting a cast shadow onto this top surface of our cube. So let's go ahead and add that in. So the light's coming from this side, so we're going to go ahead and add in that cast shadow like so. And then we'll go ahead and fill that in. I'm going to switch over to a more sharpened pencil. Perfect. And it's not going to go over this edge because this edge is just going to turn into a shadow anyways. So we'll leave it like so. And then we know this top surface of the cube is going to be the highlighted side of our cube. And then we know this side is going to be our midtone, so we can go ahead and fill that in with our midtone color. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm actually thinking that this needs to have a little bit more of a midtone around it. Like so. Let's go ahead and finish filling this in. And then this side needs to be filled in with our core highlight since it's on the opposite side of this light source. So let's go ahead and fill that in. All right, perfect. Now, the last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and add in a cast shadow from this whole entire object down here. So first, let's start off with the cube. So this light is coming off from that direction, so we need to go ahead and add in that cast shadow like so. Then we're going to get the cast shadow of the cube, and then on top of that, we're going to get the cylinder. And by the time it gets all the way to this sphere, we're not even going to see it anymore because the cast shadow will fade off. So let's go ahead and add that in now. All right, perfect. So now we just went over 4 different advanced types of highlight and shadowing for form. This should be giving you a pretty good idea of how to highlight and shadow advanced forms. And most things in life are actually going to be pretty advanced, and they're not going to be as simple as a cube or a cylinder, but they're going to have a lot more advanced things to it, such as this piece right here. Now, your assignment for this lecture is to go ahead and find some random objects in your house, so say a shoe like we did before, or anything else you can find that's more advanced and has a lot of different areas where there can be highlights and shadows. And then I want you to shine a light on that and then draw that from life. Once you've done that, go ahead and take that image and post it to the Q&A section of the course or post it to the Facebook group. I really hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one where we're going to look into how form is used and created in the human face.